Hello, everybody, and welcome to DM Writer's Room, a show where DM, I don't know what to describe myself as for the show, doesn't think hard enough and puts a mint in his mouth moments before beginning a podcast/VOD
How's it feel?
show.
When Spencer does it and he puts ice cubes in his mouth and starts crunching them during the introduction, he's a fool, but all of a sudden you can put a mint in.
I know. I really feel like I've redeemed you in a way. So,
yeah.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. We are going to be getting started here in just a second. So today we are taking a brief foray into a different system than our norm. So you are probably used to seeing us either come up with one-page RPGs live, or maybe coming up with some D&D monsters, magic items, and other things live. Occasionally we've dabbled in Monster of the Week, making some playbooks, talking about other things. Today we are going to be taking a saunter over to the fantastic world of the Cthulhu mythos and their attached horror. Today we are going to be trying to build a scenario for either Call of Cthulhu or Delta Green. Now, if you aren't familiar, Call of Cthulhu and Delta Green are two D100 games. So rather than playing with a D20, you're playing with a D100, and you're trying to roll within percentages based on how many points you've invested in a skill. Call of Cthulhu came first and is almost as old as Dungeons and Dragons, which not a lot of people understand about the game. It came out in the early 1980s, so pretty shortly after D&D did. Delta Green came out a little while later as a sort of modern Call of Cthulhu hack that eventually turned into sort of its whole own system. Now, we haven't decided which of those two we're going to be building for yet, because we wanted to give each other the opportunity to bring ideas for either. I, for instance, have brought an idea that I think would work with both, and I don't particularly care which one that we do. And I know that Spencer has brought one specifically for Delta Green, and Michael has brought one specifically for Call of Cthulhu. So we are going to be able to make some of those decisions kind of live.
I have a question, so I don't know about.
I should spit this mint out, right? I'm going to spit the mint.
That's your chance. Cthulian mythos.
Yeah, when was the first Lovecraftian horror made?
Like, when was it set, or when was it?
No. When was first creation?
1898,
20s?
I think.
Oh, man, damn, earlier than I thought. I thought it was like 1920.
So there's an
Google it, though, 'cause
argument.
you're probably right.
There's an argument to be had here. This is kind of interesting. So, if we're talking about prolific racist and well-known author Howard Philip Lovecraft, then his writing career. Let me go down here. His writing career kicks off in not 1908, in 1916 through the 1920s. However, the sphere that he is writing about, this sort of creepy exterior world, dates back to the 1800s and people like Edgar Allan Poe, who are writing similarly. Lovecraft references Poe a lot in his works. So it's a little bit of a mixed topic. A lot of people try to insist that Howard Philip sort of came up with it, but in real life, he was just the first person to take the kind of Tolkien approach of really making a mythos for people to interact with. And then other authors writing in the same magazines as him started to write in his mythos and add to it. And
It's a lot like the SCP situation.
It's identical
like
to the
1920s.
SCP situation. You are literally correct. It built on that, and that's where you get strange, whatever it's called, weird, strange, or whatever it's
Weird
called. I can't remember
tales.
the weird tales. That's where you sort of get a lot of that interest from. There are other people that are sort of interacting with the same space. Some of them, for instance, The King in Yellow is another great example. Has nothing to do with Lovecraft, but is so closely associated that people often talk about, the sort of city of Relais, where Cthulhu has his digs alongside Fair Carcosa, the city of two suns that the King in Yellow sort of makes reference to. So, it sort of builds into this larger cosmology where the world had rulers before humanity arrived, and it will have different ones after we are gone. And we are this sort of small iota of dust trying to keep things alive while we still can. And that is a good segue into talking about what these two game systems are about. Call of Cthulhu is mostly about investigating an individual mystery and surviving. Maybe stopping a cult, but often just living to the end of the adventure is kind of your goal. Delta Green is about holding off the apocalypse, small fights at a time. You are much more active in Delta Green. You are an agent, you are usually trained in some way, and you are actively trying to get an edge on a situation that you really aren't equipped for, with the knowledge that hopefully you will be dead when something finally takes the world, is sort of one of the through lines of that series. So that's kind of what those two games are really rocking with at their center. Any other questions before we get started? I'm happy to answer them to some degree. Spencer and I were in a Delta Green campaign that ran for quite a long time. Funny to say now, unfortunate at the time, it is the only Delta Green campaign so creepy and ethereal that an actual player died doing it. Now we can sort of giggle. Do we have any other thoughts, though? Any other questions about either system, how they work?
An important note, Call of Cthulhu has several time periods that you can follow, but it's most of the time in the 40s. That's where most games of Call of Cthulhu take place. Is that correct?
20s to late 30s.
20s?
A little bit before. We're usually not in World War II. Sometimes we are. So Pulp Cthulhu tends to take place later, a little closer to World War II. Often it's either the 1920s or it's Wild West, so it's 1800s. Or it's, there's Renaissance Cthulhu, there's medieval Cthulhu. I've always wanted to play medieval Cthulhu, but we've never quite managed to scrap it together just yet.
I do have a question for both games. Do they both go off of a playbook for characters creations?
Absolutely
It's
not.
a big sheet, and you've got 100 stats. And it plays off of your profession.
Yeah.
It's not a stat block.
Call of Cthulhu fundamentally does not want you to say, this is my class and here are my abilities. Call of Cthulhu says, make a whole person and put points in what you think that person has spent time learning in their life, and then try to navigate a mystery. This is often a confusion point that people have. They'll be like, but wait, I don't understand. How do I make my character better at this or that? How do I know what skills will be useful? And it's nope, you're not trying to be useful. You're trying to make a random person.
You're an accountant named Tom. You happen to be thrust into Cthulhu's maw. That's it. You're fucking incredible at research.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Pretty much.
Your athletics are a 0. You've never shot a gun before. 0. You can't do those things.
And it's why the most popular time settings are the Wild West, the 1920s, the 1950s. Why? Because those are all times where it's very easy to... This is not a joke. Those are all times where it's easy to say, I'm an accountant who fought in World War I, and you get to take points in shooting guns. I'm an accountant who fought in World War II, and you get to take a couple of points in guns. That is always the benefit. Delta Green solves that by saying, you are some kind of agent. And that is sort of built in.
Cool.
So that's what we're going to be doing. So we're going to go around the circle. Again, we're trying to make a scenario for Delta Green or Call of Cthulhu live. These are kind of dense knots of mystery. I have a light framework in my head that I think is going to help us move along. As usual, I will start, and then whichever of the two of you would like to can go next. I'm going to... I think I'm going to have Spencer pretty hooked on this one. My concept for a Call of Cthulhu or Delta Green scenario is seventh son of a seventh son. And that's it. That's my concept, is at the heart of this. I just want there to be the seventh son of a seventh son, because it's always a fun thing to try to interact with. Who else has an idea? Who's next?
I have... Michael, go ahead.
So mine is... The title is Seeds of Insanity. It's the apocalypse that is coming from some Cthulhian creature that has to be sprung forth from the earth, grown from the seeds. And it starts out as the town's planting all these seeds and getting these beautiful flowers, and then they're growing into monstrosities of some sort of plant life, and growing into this grotesque tree, and then born from that is the monster, the apocalypse.
We get a little shop of horrors, Delta Green, up in there for sure.
And fun fact, you will be, perhaps not intentionally, but all the same, making reference to not one but two different real world Call of Cthulhu monsters.
Really?
Yeah, the first being the Color Out of Space, which is a creature that is sort of possessed of the soil and the plants that grows and that kind of gross organic, what you're talking about. And the second being the dark young children of Shubniwara, that are these tree-looking creatures. That there are Call of Cthulhu adventures where people will go missing in the woods, and you will discover that there is a dark young masquerading as a tree and hunting in the woods outside of like fucking New Jersey because it's Call of Cthulhu, which is pretty great. So definitely, I like the spin that it's something that grows, and I like the idea that it is kind of an infection. I think that's really fun. Spencer?
So I have a list of 4 ideas I cooked up earlier today. I'm only going to go with one, but I'm gonna name them all off as a sneak peek for a future endeavor.
Nice.
The Hook.
Okay.
La Mancha Negra.
Okay.
The Rat King. And Fallen Angel. We're going to be going with Fallen Angel today, and the name sort of hints at what's going on here. Small town, like a super poor coastal town, probably in the north. They find a washed up body form, and they take it home to figure out what it is, but in so doing fall under its spell and believe it to be a true fallen angel. They nurse it back to health, and over this period, the townsfolk become less and less themselves and more devoted to seeing this fallen angel brought to its true glory.
Nice.
And that is ours.
So we got 3 options here. One of them is, like you said, pretty definitive. I think, ironically, all 3 of us has brought something that would work in Delta Green or Call of Cthulhu very easily. So that decision feels a tad more arbitrary now than it did perhaps a moment ago. I thought Spencer was going to be like, it's a code that gets in your brain when you said it had to be Delta Green.
I like the vibe of Delta Green dealing with it more than I like people having to survive in the town.
It's funny, we're going to talk about this a little bit more as we continue. I like Delta Green overall better than Call of Cthulhu. There are 2 mechanics from Call of Cthulhu that I think Delta Green is desperately missing. Number 1 is luck. I miss luck every time I play Delta Green. I think it's really missing that. And number 2 is, in Call of Cthulhu, you have success ranges. In Delta Green, it's about getting matching digits to crit, and I like the ranges quite a bit better than I like the matching digits. All right, so we have 7th son of a 7th son with very little outside information. We have Seeds of Insanity with some background information. This is a creature that is growing and we are trying to get ahead of. And then we have Fallen Angel with quite a bit of background information. A body washed up on the ocean. The people take it in. They are charmed by it. The town slowly begins to devote themselves to it. I think these are all really solid. Do we have any strong preferences? I will say my natural preference is going to be Spencer's because he has the clearest vision for what he wants to make, and that will make things easier. Did we have any other like really strong preferences, or did we end up wanting to roll between 2?
I think all are cool.
I like every single one. Let's roll. Rollies, baby.
Okay. Sounds like Spencer's got
it. Do we want to do a roll off just to see who gets highest, or do we want to do D6?
Oh yeah, we can do a roll off. That's fine with me. I'll get a dice out.
Roll off.
I'll roll my classic set.
Well, we're going Delta Green and
oh yeah, roll D100.
Let's do D100.
Let me rifle through my dice.
I have 2 10s, but
that's okay. We'll just pick ahead of time which one is which. That's all.
Yeah. The percentile is going to be the first digit.
And I want to take a moment to shout out, just because I don't know a lot of people who know this. If you are a D&D enthusiast like we are, on ChessX, which is Dice Company's website, you can order individual sets of dice now, and their cheapest set is the classic set.
So good.
And I love it. And I just wanted to say that because it's their cheapest set and it's really easy to get a hold of, and it makes the game a lot easier because it's very color coded. All right.
How much did it set you back?
$5.
Hell yeah.
I think.
I'll go first. My number was 61. Good luck beating slightly above average, boys.
Mine was 60.
What can I say?
I got 16. What the heck?
A lot of 666.
61, 16, 60.
60.
That sucks. That's awful. All right,
we got to
Spencer.
incorporate 6s into this.
All right, so we are going with Fallen Angel.
The Fallen Angel.
Fantastic. So, which of the two systems? So Spencer, wait a minute. Spencer said Delta Green, so we're in Delta Green. Now,
easy money.
We have a first task. Now, we need to start somewhere in Delta Green. So we already know what our monster is, and we already have some idea of what it's doing. Now, we have a lot more decisions to make in that kind of little bundle of the mystery. Is the creature willfully doing those things? Does it mere presence do those things? How involved is it with the locals? Is it just eating them? Is it intelligent? Those are all choices we need to make. And remember, we want our horror to be cosmic and unknowable to the best of our ability. So try to not be like, it's hungry. Try to give it a little bit more oomph than that if you can. So for my money, as somebody who's designed a great number of Delta Green adventures at this point, you have two real places to start. You can either start with the big evil thing. We start with the Fallen Angel, we figure out what it can do, and then we kind of move forward. What would it have been doing to the locals? What are they doing to the people around them? And so you start with the big monster, and you narrow down to the clue that your Delta Green agents get. The other option is to start with the clue. To say, we want to start with this is what they're going to be investigating first, and then connect that backwards. I don't have a preference. I've done it both ways, and I like both very well. To give examples out there, we had one adventure where it was about this cyclical thing that was happening in a town where every few years a creature was awakening and trying to seize control of some of the people in the town. With that, I started with the big thing. I was like, I came up with an idea for a monster and that it would come back, and then I figured out the small crime that would sort of spur them on. The other adventure in that same one was the opposite. I started with the small crime. I knew I wanted there to be a ritual murder because I thought that is just a cool, interesting thing, and I picked where. And then I went backwards, and that's how Spencer would know. That's how we ended up eventually on the Plateau of Lang, and almost everybody died except Spencer's character. So you can go either way, and I enjoy both. Do we have any preference or strong ideas, Michael?
I have an idea for forward chaining, so starting with Clue.
Great.
It involves our 6. Every 6th house, something's happening to it. What was your idea to what's the angels causing insanity, or
it's taking something from the people? Well, from being around the creature, they're losing some spark of humanity. I did not go any deeper than that.
All right. So every 6th house in the settlement,
there could be. So hear me out. To loop that in, I think what might originally get, not Delta Green, I don't remember the name of the organization. The organization's eye on the location. It could be
it's Delta Green.
It is Delta Green. Okay, for some reason I thought it was a weird name.
Yeah, so the Delta Green, you're remembering some deep cut nonsense from the game system itself that we don't need to get into. You're thinking of the program versus the outlaws. Yeah. You are off in the weeds. We can just say Delta Green.
Delta Green. So to get Delta Green attention, I think that it's that the people in the area are gaining massive benefits from this. There are no deaths. People aren't getting sick. So reports aren't coming out of deaths in this small town. So they're noticing that because it's strange that those reports aren't being filed. I think the 6th house, every 6th house, somebody is being sacrificed. I think would make sense to help feed this creature and lengthen out the benefit to the rest of the town.
Okay, I have a very small but large problem. What do you mean 6th house?
So by number, there'd be house number 1 on the street, 6th on the street.
So what do you mean? What if it's a duplex, is it 2 houses or 1? Do you mean 6 every 6th building? Do you mean every 6th? What if we go down a side? Is it the next street down? Is it also the 6th house on that street?
I think it's every 6th number. So if it's it would start some epicenter. In the first street down, if it was house number 200, 201, 202, up to 206, that house has somebody killed. And then down the next street, the other direction, the 6th house. And then it keeps moving until it's 36 houses down around this epicenter point. But it's by number of address.
So my question then would be, those are both things that I feel would attract the attention of Delta Green. every sixth house has a pretty clear occult symbolism and would result in them sending an agent, and so does no one is dying or even like really getting sick. So how do we want to sort of negotiate those two things? And number two, I just immediately, so every sixth house I like, but my question then becomes, we just need to motivate that, right? I don't feel like it's satisfying if it's like the cultists think it's a spooky number, like how did they land on this sixth house? My first image in my mind is some like shadowy creature shambling down the road and stopping at every sixth house in turning, and that gives into like the strange geometry of Cthulhu, right? These weird outsiders that have their own logic. It's like there's a six-sided shape associated with this creature, and so it moves in sixes, the way that huge weird one for people out there, the Hounds of Tindalos emerge only from the corners of rooms. Any room with a corner, a Hound of Tindalos can emerge through it.
Do we want the angel to have 6 wings?
Great place to start. So then my question is this angel up and mobile and moving around the town, or is it a dead? Because my first image was this thing is dead. It is a dead body in a church that they are praying to, and it is giving them gifts. That was my first thought, is there is this like bloated corpse. If it is that it is up and mobile, for those of you just tuning in, we are making an adventure for Delta Green. That's why we're talking about bloated corpses. Sorry, man. So is it, I was imagining them as like praying to this drowned being. Is it up and moving and alive? Is it, because listen, there's not much more Cthulhu than it is dead and not dead all at the same time. Like during the day it is dead, at night it is alive. It's like right up the middle.
I was very much picturing it alive, but on like death's door. It's like just enfeebled, basically.
It's totally stationary, but you see like twitches of life occasionally. Something like that. Is that what you're picturing?
Yeah.
So then my next image, because eventually, right, this is the end. This is really important to note. This is the end of this scenario. This is like a dozen sessions in, right? So my first image that pops into my head that gives me that feeling of like, oh no. My first image is this like twitching, barely alive creature and like on a palanquin being carried down the street to every sixth house. Like that's the first thing that pops into my head. Or it's it like dragging itself. So like night falls and everybody turns and the doors open and they watch the creature like drag itself off of the podium and slowly down the steps, heading towards the street to go to the next sixth house.
I think it's a progression. So it opens with, and we have like a countdown clock essentially. It opens with it twitching and being carried around on the palanquin. After it devours enough sixth households, it is then mobile. It can move and take action, and things rapidly get worse when that happens. That's my image. So that way we have like a reason to expedite. We're running out of time before it is up.
Okay, and I like, so the pattern of 6, I like. It doesn't make perfect sense, but it definitely doesn't need to. And the fact that it's getting stronger, I really like, because it motivates action. I think these slayings need to be nightly then. And I would add one more. Okay, I'm going to add a couple of things then. So I think in this scenario, the murders are not reported anywhere because there's no one to report them to. I think that what flags Delta Green is that no one is getting sick. I think that is the only reason you are sent there, is like our agents will be encouraged to be like, one of you should be a member of the CDC. And like, you should have kind of other people that are members of these other organizations, and you roll up like not knowing what you're getting into. All you hear is like, there is something strange going on. People are not aging. We need you to investigate. It's funny. This is very Shadows over Innsmouth is definitely kind of the energy we're going with here, which I like. So 6th house, no deaths. 6th house, creature half alive. Carried. Crawls. Walks.
Flies.
I know. If I knew, there is a problem with this where there is just such a massive difference between writing the book and writing the adventure. In my mind, the obvious next step would be for 6 houses it is carried, for 6 houses it is crawled, for 6 houses it walks. That's just too long. No Delta Green adventure is going to go for 18 days. It's just not going to happen. Everything's going to wrap up in 4. That's just how it works. Okay. And no deaths is our triggering event. Actually, I do want to bring something up. There's something interesting going on in the world of Delta Green right now that is kind of like really actively kind of being chatted out, which is, so number one, all of Delta Green is about to go on sale to try to, because they're in a foreign country and they want to build up money so that the tariffs from our current government don't hugely negatively affect them. And also, apparently there is something of a crisis in the entire Delta Green community, which is that you are supposed to play members of various government organizations in a country that is rapidly moving into a dictatorship. And so it's like, how are we going to navigate this one? The early conversation has been that there's some people talking about, like, there's a Delta Green like game called the French Laundry that takes place in England. And so people are already saying, like, is Delta Green, the game, going to have to move countries to accommodate with the strangeness that we are dealing with our own sort of eldritch threat here in our own home state? So it's every 6th house. The creature is half alive. It is carried, then it crawls, and then it walks. There is something about that geometry. We like the idea that it has 6 wings. I'm going to put wings in quotes. I don't want this thing to actually look like an angel. I want it to be described as an angel. And then I want the players who are not charmed by it to see it and have a very different experience of what the creature looks like. Yeah. Because that's the punch for me. That's where the juice is. So
some are like chicken wings without the feathers. There's like a spider leg in there.
There's an arm.
Yeah, which is great.
It has 6 extended pieces off of its back.
So now my question then would be, all right, so no deaths is what triggers us getting involved. Who called? Right? What happened? We need to start thinking about, like, what draws you there, because you're going to get there and make contact with somebody. There needs to be somebody to talk to about what has happened. And so as you arrive, you need to be able to kind of meet this person who will tell you about what's going on. And we'll set our game in, like, 1994, so that we don't need to deal with too much weirdness in any direction.
I think I would like to add in the inevitable issue with this is the agents are going to have to neutralize this thing because it's dangerous and fucked up. It is providing a benefit. If the person that reported this was like a college kid whose parent was dying of cancer and they instantly went into remission and they're doing great now, they called to report it because they're like, oh my god, something happened here. And everybody in the hospital was suddenly doing well. This like small town hospital, in hospice care, whatever. Everybody's recovering shockingly. So they report it saying, this is incredible. They don't know the secret. You show up there, you're going to kill the angel. Those people are going to die. I think it's a sad effect of having to do this thing, but I do think it fits in with the Delta Green.
But it's just it's just sanity loss, baby. Yeah. That's all just sanity loss. That's icing on the cake. That's what we need. Yeah, unfortunately, so part of designing for Delta Green is we are going to have to talk about some grim subjects. So definitely, we will put in the description. It's not there now. We will put like content warning down there. I wasn't sure what kind of thing we would end up rolling with. But no, I think that's great because we need to find a hole in the fence, right? It's easy to understand how this community would quickly gather around this and how it would be done sort of secretively. That is the only question that we are still going to have to address a little bit, like, is everybody in the town benefiting? Who isn't? How does the charm work? There's some loose questions there that we really need to answer, but the hole in the fence is there is a student out of state at a college who gets a call that their terminally ill parent is now perfectly healthy and fine. And they go, what? And they tell one of their like it's a student in med school who tells their professor goes, what? And it's, some rare whatever that really can't be cured. And so the professor calls a colleague, that colleague is a friendly, and they call Delta Green and go, hey man, something's not right in, Wichita or whatever.
And then your contact is like this college student who reported it. They know something's going on. And then when you have to pull the plug, there's that extra sanity loss because it's somebody who's been friendly and helping you on this case and reported it. Now you killed their mom. Sad.
Which begs the question, what does happen to those people? Does it matter what stage they are in their recovery? How long does it take for them to gain all of these benefits to the point that they are perfectly healthy? Do they revert, or does everybody who was touched by it drop dead? Right? Like, they're very different answers.
I think the answer is they gain the benefits almost immediately upon charm. When it dies, it's as if that charm didn't occur. So if they would have been dead at this point, they die. If they would have been incredibly sick, but still alive, they're still alive, but incredibly sick. So I think that it reverts as if the charm had never happened.
I'm gazing into the future, and I see a version of this where we think that is a little too fantasy in a couple of sessions, and we say that they all like go catatonic and can't think anymore, which will effectively be the same thing. Or maybe they're riddled with other problems, right? All of this spontaneous cell growth doesn't stop. And everybody, and all of a sudden, and so a really good thing that Delta Green likes to do is to narrate the negative consequences after the fact. There is a very famous Delta Green adventure that does this, that actually ends with a small town in New Mexico being nuked. Like, if you don't do a good enough job in the adventure, the town there is a training accident, and a thermonuclear weapon is dropped on a town. So that's a really good example. So I like that narrating at the end, like, and that town, like, everybody, like, chronic disease and these things, like, wipes that town off the map in the next 5 years, and like the town ends up quarantined, and
Yes, like we're talking about the big stuff. Like people won't be getting colds, and like they're affected by that. That's gonna have huge long-term stuff. Like 5 years.
Their immune system fucked at this point because they haven't been needing it.
It's like taking melatonin too long, and then you don't produce your own anymore when you try to go to bed. Yeah.
I think that what we can go with is it is an ever-expanding radius of effect. Nice. Starting at, like, the church in town that's, like, / hospice care, that's where it starts. So the immediate effect is on those sickest folk. It spreads out as more and more people are killed. So if you stop the adventure when it's only 3 blocks wide, only those 3 blocks are going to get killed. If you stop the adventure 2 weeks deep and the entire town is sick, they're fucked. The town is gone.
I have a very good idea that you can say no to. We don't start in a church in town, because that leaves me with that question, right? How do they walk down the street to a 6th house and kill somebody and not have somebody call anyone about it? Yeah. They start in the parish, in the hospital. They find the body, they bring it to the hospital. The parish is where they bring it to, because they are under this weird effect. And so I think the first 4 victims are every 6th room in the hospital.
Yeah, every 6th bed.
And then and so the cult starts in the hospital. These doctors and nurses are all having this effect. They're all starting to believe that this is real and that this is an angel. And so every 6th room in the hospital is the first to go. And then it's the next building. And then you have this small pocket that can go to the 6th home nearby. And that's on the outskirts, right? The hospital's outside of town. That lets us slowly engage with the people of the town. And it also gives us a terrible house on a hill to send the party at the end.
Big ass hospital. Yeah. Perfect.
What do we think? Are we in? Are we out?
100%.
I love that idea. I was thinking about something. Just an NPC idea for a little extra intel person. Somebody that knows they're on the chopping block.
They're going to be the 6th house.
Yeah, this next upcoming one. They're part of a family who has no health issues. They know that they won't. None of this has helped them at all. And in a way, they're a little greedy.
A real whistleblower who's been seeing. They saw the night before, 6 houses away, somebody get carried out screaming, and they're like, "What the fuck?" So they did a little investigating and found 6 more houses down was open, and they're next. I could see that. I could see a call going.
Also, I want to say the like palanquin that we were describing them carrying the creature on is a stretcher that's decorated with like shards of glass and things from the hospital. So for those of you just tuning in now, we are making a scenario for Delta Green that is based on this idea of a group of people finding what they believe to be a fallen angel that is actually one of these kind of outsider creatures that begins to give great health benefit in exchange for feeding the creature. It is every 6th house. And the creature begins very weak and frail, grows stronger as they continue until eventually it is an existential threat. Nobody is dying, nobody is getting sick, first in the hospital, then in the town, then, eventually in like the whole area, the county or whatever. We know that we think that when you succeed at the end, there is dire consequences for those people who have been miraculously healed. And then finally, we are going to set it, the center of this is the hospital, because that way we don't need to justify how they immediately started pulling people out of houses and nobody got involved. They started with every 6th room that then became every 6th house, and by the time they got to house 12, no one was sick, ailing parents were healed. How are you going to stand against those people? The local sheriff, his father, his mother, his child is ill. Child is better, but also worse. You got to be, you still have to be careful when making these kinds of games. Some direct family member there, and so there's not even anyone to call. How long before people just start cutting the phone lines in and out of town, right? If we set it in the 90s, you cut that phone line, it's over, brother. You're not talking to anybody. And we know that our inn is a college student. That is our sort of hole in the fence. Is this college student who heard that there was a miraculous recovery for one of their family members who was in the hospital, told a professor, that professor told a colleague, that colleague is a friendly of Delta Green, somebody that they don't trust with the truth, but who they have brought in just enough to give them information. Okay. So we've got the big, like, monster scale. We're moving more narrow. Michael, what's up?
You made me think of the stretcher palanquin. How it's adorned with like used bandages, a bone saw, just the grodiest.
Detritus. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's like the icons they are attaching to it. They're like reliquaries. Are like items from the person that have healed, right?
Oh yeah.
You have like a tumor in a jar hanging from it. Oh, that sucks. It's great. Okay. So continuing to narrow down then. So I like this. These people show up at the hospital. They find this thing. They are enchanted by it. That hospital is taken over in the next few weeks. And each night, every 6th room of the hospital has an unfortunate accident or something. And this creature goes from room to room. Then it starts moving out into the town. It grabs somebody. It grabs another person. That's great. And then we know that at some point it's going to hit a family that is going to be resistant. And that gives us that, like, I tend to think of those things as really everybody arrives, and then on like the 2nd day, that family will get hit, is usually how it works in scenarios.
It's the stopgap where it's like they didn't figure out anything, so now here's a big kick in the pants.
It's the midnight call. It's the like, you wake up to a start, pick up the phone. What is it? Somebody's been taken. You hang up the phone and get up and get moving. So, but now I need one more step. When you arrive in town, where in this avenue are you? Right? So do you arrive in town and they're still just in the hospital? They haven't even moved into the town yet. And nobody knows why no one in the hospital is dying. And maybe you go investigate and everybody's very cagey. You go back to the town and you're like, I don't know what's going on. And you start talking to locals and the situation gets worse. Or do we join after it has spread to the town? And there is a small group, maybe a couple of streets that have started to believe. And so there's kind of a whole area that you have to be very careful in. Or are we full send, everything's bad, like it's well into the town? That's not my inclination, but it's what we could do.
I think number 2, it's like a neighborhood deep. It's gotten out of the hospital, it's in the town proper, and that's when more clues and word starts getting out. Nobody believes it because it's crazy, whoever might have noticed it, but it's early enough that almost nobody will have noticed. It's been like 3 houses. How could they've noticed? Oh, we got a comment from James. They arrive on the 6th night. When it spreads to the town the night they arrive, they have to investigate the town and the hospital. Yeah.
That's pretty good. The first night a family gets somebody. Now, very important question. Does everybody in the house die?
I think that it's easier to have Wait! No. Only one person in the house is killed. I think it's whoever's encountered first in the house. And then everybody else is immediately charmed by the creature. So you can't question them because they'll say, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, go ahead.
I think when this creature feeds is when that charm washes out from it. And I think the first victim, you will find their body on the beach. And none of the people remember.
Oh, it's like the fisherman or whatever.
And what none of the people remember is that when they found it, the first thing it did was tear one of their people's throats out. And then the rest of them were enamored.
Charm.
And so you keep running into these houses where somebody's dead, but everybody's just totally mellow.
Not a big deal.
They're like, it's really unfortunate. And you're like, okay, all right, cool.
And they're like, what happened? I don't know, heart attack? Ripped out throat.
Yeah, there you go. All
if
right.
I can,
Kill body on beach.
a thought. The one it goes for, maybe it's who's ever is considered the healthiest.
Arrive on first night. I think I like that from James. It gives a good oh wow, we're here when it matters. Whoever it is the healthiest. I think that would make sense. They just make the best sacrifice. We don't need to worry about it that much, right? It's whoever would make the best kind of meal, right? Whoever is hardiest and most hale.
It's nice to know who it would be targeting if they figure that fact out, because if they use a family as bait, they know who to watch out for when the thing comes into the house. It'll be going for the dad who runs ultra marathons. So they lock him in a room to buy time to get the thing. So you got a decoy option.
It's this is more of a movie, TV, book idea where they would do that, and then they find out the dad has a heart condition, and it goes for,
and he avoids. That's crazy. Yeah. What were you gonna say, Ethan?
Well, first of all, I want to say on I think on the 4th night that happens for sure. That's great. On the 4th night, you walk into the house and everybody is being very polite, and then you hear from the basement thud 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 thud. And if you go down there, you find this Iron Man athlete with pancreatic cancer who's well, I just do it to feel the best that I can, but he hadn't told his family yet. And so it killed some random member of the family, not the one that had been locked in the basement. And now the rest of the family is keeping the member who wasn't affected by the charm locked up so that they won't tell anybody. I think that's a great idea, Michael. I think that's really interesting. I have to write it down on I'm about to go onto my second note card. We're really cooking over here.
We're burning.
All right.
It's all 820.
Locked away, secret sick. Locked away, secret sick. I like it. Okay, cool. So my thought is just kind of an important decision. When we say that the person in that we're making an adventure for Delta Green, it's a scenario where there's a fallen angel. It is consuming everybody in every 6th house. It starts with every 6th room in a hospital. The people in the hospital are the center of the cult. It slowly builds out into town as we continue. When we say it kills them, we have a pretty important decision to make. Because, right, my instinct now, if we arrive and the first person is dead, is we need a reason for all of our players to arrive. So maybe one of them could be motivated by being I'm with the CDC and I'm here to check in on what's going on. But we also need to have a CDC person, an FBI agent, these other figures who can all masquerade as other people if they need to, or pretend to really be themselves. So there needs to be a crime. Right? There needs to be something that would actually call in attention that might require a little bit more. So that ties into my question, which is, when this thing kills people, what does that look like? Because you made the joke, they say, oh, we think he had like an arrhythmia, and that, and then you walk into the room and there's blood all over the walls, like is funny and maybe too funny. So my question is, like, does it tear people to pieces, in which case you will get increasingly ridiculous claims of robberies gone wrong, or does the person get touched on the shoulder and drop dead?
I think number 2 with a twist, it is infecting this person with the wounds and sickness of those that it's healed under its charm. So it hits them, tumors sprout, its arm falls off because somebody was an amputee and it grows their arm back in the hospital. So they're getting killed by the ailment that the rest of the town is being spared.
I'm going to put a mandatory cosmic horror spin on that. That is what the people at the hospital have perceived it as. It's not actually. It's just that they deform and their DNA breaks down and they explode. But as far as the people at the hospital are concerned, they're like, it's the tumor. Like, they read that onto it.
It did it.
And then the medical examiner in your crew can be like, that's not what's happening. You're taking a look at this. None of this is consistent with the people that have been healed. This is like a totally different thing. It's important to remember, the people can think that this creature wants to help them. It is essential that it doesn't.
Not give a shit.
It is essential that it does not. Okay, so I like that. So people, and so it's only like on autopsy that you would notice then?
I was thinking it would be incredibly obvious. Like, the thing is amalgamed, filled with tumors, limbs falling off. It's disgusting looking. But the charm people just don't see that. They don't see anything.
Oh, like a full Emperor's New Clothes. Like, when you walk in, they're like, it's really sad. And you see this, like, horrifying, bloated body. And then you turn to the sheriff and you're like, what are you talking about? And the sheriff's like, what do you mean?
Heart attack.
He just fell. Look at him. He's got a bruise. Ooh, that's really fun. Yeah. It'd be frustrating as a player, but I do think it would work really well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Once
and
they
that
understand
could be a tell.
it.
If you're playing with a specific party, them grabbing, like, a limb and bringing it to people to see if they're infected. Like, what do you see? What do you see on this arm? And it's just covered in masses. And they're like, I don't know, an arm. Why are you carrying around an arm? Then you're like, that person's infected. We can't trust them. We can't trust anything they say. But if they show somebody and they do see what you see, they're not charmed. So you can trust them.
Yeah, so just a kind of related question. Like, how powerful is this charm? So when you show up with the arm, is it a bouquet of flowers? Like, how hard does it go? Because the problem is we need to make sure that our agents are not arrested, right? So, like, if it's still a dismembered arm, they still have pretty big problems. Like, what do the charmed people see when they come to them with this limb? Like, what do they witness? Is it an arm and they have to be very careful and, like, show people a finger in a bag? Because I think that's kind of a fun challenge, right? Mm-hmm. Or
what can you get away with?
Or do they see something that makes sense?
I think they see, like, as easy of an issue as they can. Like, they see a dead person, they think heart attack. They see a fucked up arm, they think that's an amputated arm. Did you get that from the hospital? They just go for the easiest rational explanation rather than this is a horror beyond my imagination.
Yeah, they fill in the gaps.
They fill in the gaps, and they just don't react in a typical way.
Okay. I think that is the fundamentals of the adventure taken care of, which is great. We're at that. It's 8:25. We've got 35 more minutes on the clock. We have a little bit of time to think about the people that are involved. So the basics of this Call of Cthulhu scenario, or this Delta Green scenario, is you are agents of Delta Green. You've been called in because there was a hospital that is experiencing no deaths.
We got a comment coming in hot.
James Hurst, the town crazy, born on June 6th, 1966, saw the first murder at the beach from a distance and are the voice of reason yapping in the square.
Yeah. So that's another contact, is the town crazy. 100%.
I kind of like the idea. So there is fun to this, like, geometric pattern. It's definitely worth wondering. Is it interested? Like, does it feel a little too fantastical for people born like in June to not have the charm work on? Like, is there some alignment there? I do think, James, it's a good idea. I'm worried it's a little too Pulp Cthulhu, but I like, first of all, I think no matter what, there is a town goofball who saw it from a distance. There's a fisherman who saw it from a distance, and this town is like an old fishing town, who's like, I saw it, I found the body out there. I think it's perfect, right? He's in the drunk tank at the sheriff's station, and that clues us in that the sheriff's a bad guy. He keeps trying to get you to not interview him, and like really resists it, even though he's just some town drunk that you want to do that with. Is it... How do we think that it is enough of a swing that we like the idea that people strongly associated with like the number 6?
Have a resistance?
How would that work? Because like I'm worried the connection to our calendar dates is a little too light, but you know, I'm not.
Yeah. It's the 6th son. No,
we could do that. We could have like one person in town who is like a 6th son, who's like, everyone's been acting so weird. Like, I think that is kind of interesting.
The easy answer is the fisherman saw it when they were dragging the body out and it killed that guy, but he was on the boat that hauled it, so he was still away, like at the pier when they started interacting with the body. He was like docking it. So when he looked up, he wasn't within that like 15-foot sphere of effect. It's easier to do that he was too far away to be affected than it is to combine the number 6. I do like the idea of having more number 6 stuff.
Okay, wait. So fisherman, the fisherman found body.
Make the radius 60 feet.
Found body too far.
That worked.
When killed. Too far when charm. And I think if we could really lean in to the cosmic horror trope, I think Old Man Withers lives in a cabin like outside of town, and I think if you find him, you find him trying to solve the mystery. Like you find him with like
he's got pictures,
but he has like passages of the Bible pasted up on the wall, and he has like references to a beast with 6 heads and 6 eyes and 6 mouths, and is circling it, and has like one of the things going on in the town is like a basin of holy water has been stolen from the church, and you find a basin, and he's like pouring holy water into shotgun shells, like I will sanctify them. I think he's really
got 6 crosses up on the walls. Yeah.
What's the story from old Egypt where they had to put the symbol on their door, or their eldest son would die?
Oh, that's a biblical
story referencing Egypt. Moses told them to use lamb's blood to paint the I think it is supposed to have been like the picture of the fish or something, like those one of the signs of God on their doorways. So I kind of like that. It would be very funny, like there's a zoo in town, and like one of the lambs gets killed, and at night you find the fisherman with a bucket of blood going to every 6th house on the street and painting
I'll protect
the fish.
I'll protect you.
I'll save them all.
Just trust me.
You just trust old Whitner. The problem is we've created a character who is just too lovable. I don't know if we can keep them this fun. I'll write it. All right, lamb's blood. Maybe that happens. I'm gonna actually write Whitner. Maybe Whitner is, so often Delta Green Adventures will be like, hi, this is an NPC for you to use if your players are really dumb.
They just are not interacting.
Take them out in a little wagon and have them start doing stuff if the players are really oblivious to what is going on. And I think that Whitner is ours. They're like, Whitner will come up either way. If the players are really not getting it, have Whitner start doing things in town trying to stop it, and that will pull the players in a direction in a way that'll be pretty helpful. They might end up accidentally killing him, but they'll still investigate his cabin and find all his notes. C'est la vie. These things do happen.
Hear me out. To make Whitner less lovable and more crazy, he can start committing arson. He's burning down the 6th houses on the streets, so there is no more 6th house. It probably doesn't work. It would just move to the next house down the line. But that's what he's trying to do.
That's probably the last Maybe
the
like
biggest
one of the last Whitner interactions is he finally freaks out and he burns down a 6th house. A bunch of people die in the fire, and that night it just goes to the next house. It didn't help at all. Another very important cosmic horror is your very good idea simply does not work, because it doesn't actually matter that it's counted or whatever. It is because it is the 6th house. If you burn down the house, it's not a house. There is still a 6th house. Right? If there was only 5 houses in the world, this creature would go back to the first and kill whoever was there.
Yep.
All right. Okay.
I mean, fucking nailed that shit. So what's now? We have to do like clue building.
So our next thing, one of 2 choices, would be looking at specific scenarios. So it's time for us to come up with NPCs and clues. And there's 2 really good ways to approach that in my experience, which might not agree with the books. I haven't read the Delta Green books in a very long time. I need to go back through those. So number 1, first option would be we start with the scenario, right? We make the house that you are investigating. Who's in the house? What are the clues in the house? Where does that lead you? Option 2 is we start with the people. Who's the doctor in the hospital? Who are the 5 people that found this thing, right? We start with the big characters and we move to smaller characters, is the other way. So we can kind of go NPC first, or we can go situation first. I have found the more social my party is, the better NPC first functions. The less social they are, the better it is to start with clues and have NPCs be some of those clues. With our own group, the first adventure, clues were the dominant effective thing, because you guys, when I ran Delta Green for Spencer and our friends, they were playing like somebody from the military, a scientist, a doctor, right? And so the clues worked. In the second adventure, I put in a bunch of clues and you guys found out who might be responsible and executed them in the middle of the night and went, did that work? And just waited a day and went, that didn't work. Let's find the next guy. Like, it's a very different build.
Adventure 1, we treated, and this is advice for anybody out there that's going to play Delta Green, treat it like a procedural crime drama, and you'll figure it out. Like, the human element stays the same.
It was fun.
There's death, there are crimes, and there are crime scenes, and there are witnesses. Procedural crime drama works. The first adventure, we did like 4 sessions of it. In episode 4, I was like, I wonder if this is bullshit and there's not even like a Cthulhu monster here.
It was really
this
funny.
Might just be a guy. It would have been so funny if it was just regular serial killing. It wasn't. There was a monster. But just do it that way. It works.
I've been very excited to do it. It never came up. I do recommend. I want to try it someday. If you play Delta Green with your friends, have like one adventure every big long campaign playing with your friends. Have one of them just be a guy, just be like some dude.
It's not always a monster, you know.
Delta Green's just wrong. You end up calling up and it's just some random guy being weird. Okay, so which of those do we want to go with? So coming up with the scenarios takes a little bit more time, but we almost have a full half an hour. We have about 26 minutes on the clock here. Would we rather make a bunch of NPCs, or would we rather say, let's make that first house that you are called to investigate?
Let's open with factions and then NPCs if we have time to fill out those factions. And then we can always come back for some scenario work. But I think factions first, so big picture, little picture.
Yeah. All right, cool. So factions first. I'm going to put a bunch of dots down, and I'm not anticipating us using them all. So our first faction we know, and it's the people that dragged the body out. And I think they are going to be a little different than the hospital faction, right? These are the people that were first charmed, maybe the strongest charmed. I'm not sure if that's true, but, they're the most exposed.
Yeah.
Which is going to give us a window that I want to talk about in a minute. So that's faction 1, right? Is the first people. Do we have a name for them? The Piedmont Bay Fish Boys? Like, do we have a name for these? Are they associated with the fishermen? Are they associated with what were they doing on the beach in the middle of the night?
I think that they would probably be the fisherman's crew. So they would be like the crew, because the captain is the one who is still docking the boat, that's why he's gone kind of crazy, because his friend died and the rest of them are talking about like him being insane. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, I saw him get killed by that creature we pulled out, and they're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, they remember.
And they just ostracize him.
They remember that friend like heroically drowning, saving this angel from the waters, and like refuse to talk about it any other way. They're like, what are you talking about? What I also like about this is we can put in the thing for the keeper. Is it the keeper? No. What is it?
It's the dealer or some shit like that. It's not the dealer, but it's...
That's funny. So what we can that I think is really interesting is we can be like, you can put details in there for the person that runs the game that nobody else knows, and I think the detail is
handler.
The handler. For the handler,
I didn't even look it up yet.
I think the monster like information just says like, this is just a defense mechanism. Like, that's it. It is some release of spores that makes you see the creature in a positive light. It, like, jacks you full of endorphins and hallucinogenics. And so everybody they interview will describe the crime differently. Because it's just them seeing this, like, huge LSD dream of what happened in each case. So, faction number 1 is the crew. Now, I do have a question. How do we need to make sure that the players don't say, I don't really care. Like, every 6th house, one person dies, and all these people are alive and well. It saves all these lives. Do we care? Now, the answer would be... Sorry, I'm just gonna... Let me ramble through here. The answer should be, you're Delta Green operatives, you're here to kill the thing. But if it's not that, what happens if you are exposed for too long? Because the crew is our window into that. What were you about to say?
I was gonna say the easy answer is, at best, this thing is going to continuously destroy every 6th household in the world until it's killed. And the longer you wait, the stronger it'll be, and the more impossible it will be to kill it. Right now, it's weakened, you can do it. If you wait until it takes over a state, you're cooked. So you have to do it. It's going to kill all these people. And eventually, best case scenario, it killed every 6th house on the entire planet. And then it restarts the cycle on the new 6th house. Yeah. And then it restarts the cycle on the new 6th house. You can't do it because it will kill everybody. It's just going to take 500 years.
So, Michael, go ahead.
I think the other part to it is we're talking about one house a day. I think as it gets stronger, it starts doing more than one house a night.
It needs more to sustain. It does 2 6th houses. And then 3 6th houses. Some shit like that.
Yeah, like, as we talked about how it's crawling, then walking, then running. I think that incorporates it pretty good.
I have another pitch, related. So it's every 6th house. That's great. And we know that we want the players to not want this to go on forever. And we have this crew that were exposed a long time ago. How does this creature make more creatures? And does it have anything to do with the fact that the people aren't getting sick? Is this entire town going to turn into... Like, especially if we keep what we described, that the wings are like these mix-up of DNA and strangeness, these like limbs made of bone and carapace and skin and flesh and feathers. Like, do the crew start to sprout limbs? Like, is this thing... making more of itself as it is infecting these other people, which would explain why everyone in the hospital dies when you kill the creature. They literally can't, their bodies aren't meant to be that way, right?
They're like hosts right now, yeah. I think that works. I think that definitely works. It's a question of like, is it everybody that gets charmed? Or is it every 6th person that gets charmed gets turned into a monster, and the other 5 just... their DNA unravels and they die at a certain point?
My instinct would be to say everybody, because I don't want the every 6th thing to turn into us being like, do you get it? Like,
it's there again.
Do you get
it? That's fair.
I think 6 limbs. I think 6 limbs, 6th house
6 houses
is enough. I don't think it's we gain much by continuing to reiterate on the 6th thing. What I also like about that, Spencer, if it's a fallen angel, I want this thing to have fallen from space to colonize this planet. That's what I want to do. That's awesome. That's the best possible option, is that it would spread and consume the planet, and then it would like release spores into the atmosphere.
It goes to the 6th planet.
Well, what I was thinking, it like releases spores into the atmosphere. Those spores form into a body, crash into the ocean of another planet, and keep doing the same thing over and over and over.
I do have a question. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
how long should it take for this original crew to change?
Oh, I think they manifest symptoms after like a couple days, but I think like 6 years. We can do one more 6. Like we can say like it takes like 6 years for them to fully become these creatures. That timetable's too fast. Then you have to, as the handler, be like, well, 6 days already went by. So is it every 6th house on the same street? Is it every 6th and every 12th? Are they on different streets? Like, it immediately complicates things. What were you about to say, though, Spencer? You look like you have a related thought.
My counter was, it happens fairly quickly, and that's where we get minions to combat that aren't human beings, quote unquote. So if the crew, because they were the most directly affected, after like a week, start to become this creature's underlings, it gives more creatures to fight, right? You find these things crawling about in the alleyways or in the water, and you have to combat them because they are going to fuck your shit up. So it gives you a minor creature to fight before you encounter the primary enemy, instead of it just being humans, bad guy.
So then my question is, we have 2 choices. 2 paths are diverging in this yellowed wood. And this will let us go into your it's every 6th person thing if you really want to do that, which I don't have a problem with. I'm cool with every 6th person being a full offspring if the other 5 turn into nasty little gremlins.
Yeah.
Like, I'm weirdly thinking, is it like the orcs from Warhammer 40k? Where, like, So the orcs in Warhammer 40k are a complete ecosystem. Each of them is a creature of like fungus and spores, and when they die, they explode into spores, and those spores develop into other orcs and the creatures they ride and the creatures they eat and the things they use for labor. It's like an encapsulated ecosystem. So when this thing starts to spread, does the first 5 people become these like scavengers, and the 6th become another one, in which case we know how many members of the crew there are. There was 7, the captain fled, there's 6 of them, and after a certain number of days they will begin to like multiply.
Yes, because it also builds into that whole terraforming alien idea. It's making an entire ecosystem through this regeneration.
And this is a great example of how you can, like, Cosmic Horror sounds intimidating to write and come up with, especially if you start playing. I really recommend Call of Cthulhu to playing with your friends, especially if you have people who are really struggling to get into roleplay, like really getting into it. Call of Cthulhu and Delta Green really demand that of the players. They don't have abilities to lean on as often. They have to be social. They have to navigate clues. They have to talk about how do they respond to like crazy dreams and visitors in the middle of the night. It sounds really intimidating to be like, but how do I make something that people don't understand? Just keep increasing the scale until eventually you get somewhere like here, where it's like, oh, it wants to like take over the entire planet. Why? And it's like, because it was the next planet. That's Cosmic Horror. It's not because humans are special. It's not because the planet's really neat. It's because it was the next planet that they landed on, right? That's it. It's just that you were the next, and the next will be the next after that. And so it is important that you stop them here, right? Okay, cool.
Something with the design of the new purple and the new little gremlin things. I do think that the new like 6th charm doesn't look like this, because this original one's the host from a different planet.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that's fun. There are very obvious differences between it because it was some alien creature.
There's a Klingon.
Yeah, sure. That's fun.
Influenced by planet. I think that's fun. We're getting dangerous. Now that does take a big step towards the xenomorph from Aliens. So we need to be a little careful. We need to be a little cautious, right? No, all right. I think really solid. Okay, so our first faction is the crew. And the crew is how we learn about this. Maybe if you manage to run into them on one of the first days, we get a real Shadows over Innsmouth. Like, they look strange and, like, really weird. They're, like, lurching down the street. You see, like, and you're like, whoa. Like, it's difficult. And after a couple of days, they've gone full sort of monstrous. So our next group, obviously, is the hospital staff are the people who take this as like magical healing and who are charmed every night for a week, getting everybody in the hospital getting woof. So I think I will tentatively title them the cult, right? These are the people that are the most indoctrinated, which I really like because it means that the people out in the town are the least affected. I think that the people in the hospital, there has to be some kind of almost dementia-like symptoms where your memory being wiped like that, it's just not good for you. So I think the people in the town are like a little flighty and they don't remember what really happened and they don't see what you show them. I think the people in the hospital have begun to be very strange.
Eyes are totally glossed over. Whenever somebody comes in for treatment, they're like guided into a room and the room is shut and locked, but they don't talk. So if somebody escapes from the hospital, they tell these agents, or they start telling everybody, like, something's wrong at the hospital. The doctors, they're not even there. Like, they wouldn't speak to me. They wouldn't talk to me. I wasn't able to be treated. It's because they were just locking them in the room to be eaten.
But the other thing I like about that is you're locked in the room. The next morning, the room is unlocked, and you're better.
Yeah.
And so, like, the first person comes out, and they're like, they wouldn't speak to me. Nothing happened. And you're like, well, how do you know anything happened at all? And they go, and, like, their arm is in a cast. Broken. And they're like,
yeah.
My arm is broken, and I don't feel it. I don't feel anything. Like, I don't know what they did.
I broke it 4 days ago.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Something funny, and it would require them to talk a little bit, but it's something that doctors and nurses do every time you have a patient. When you come in, you ask the patient, do you know where you are? Do you know what day it is? Do you know the year it is? All that stuff. And so the doctors and nurses asking them, all right, what day is it? And you giving them the right day, and them going, no, it's the day from
that week, the week ago. Yeah, and every time
they keep saying that day. It's too good.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Questions wrong, answers. Questions wrong, date wrong. I like that. I like that a lot. All right, cool. And I think this also gives us a really fun secondary time incentive if we have these people with like healed limbs, because we want the opportunity, right, for somebody with a mythos skill, somebody with a really high mythos, to be able to like look up this creature. Like, is there any record of it? Have we seen it before? Is there any other callings to it? And to be able to find it and to have the answer be, I think there is a time frame where it's like, if you were healed, if you were affected by this creature within a day, within 12 hours, and the creature is killed, you will probably be fine. You might have some like lingering health concerns like way later in life. If it's been like 2 days, you'll live to your 60s. You'll live a mostly normal life, but eventually you will succumb to it. If you get to like a week, a couple weeks, maybe a month if you're lucky, and if it's anything beyond that, days, hours.
Really similar to like radiation. You are low level exposed to radiation, you're going to get cancer when you're 60 and you're going to die of it, but you're going to make it to 60. You were standing next to Fukushima when it exploded,
you melt.
You're done. And then there's the in between where it's like, yeah, you got a few months. It's going to be really painful, though, and then you're going to die. So we've got that kind of covered.
Okay, cool. So we have the crew, we have the cult. I have 3 more stops here. We need the law enforcement in town to either be bad guys or have been charmed already. So that's the question for us to answer now. So we have 2 outwardly villainous factions. Is that enough villainous factions? And so now we have somebody that is inadvertently going to get into your way. Monster of the Week has this character, and they have their own. It's called the Authority, I think.
The foil.
Yeah, they just get in your way all the time. So is the sheriff and co., whoever is in charge of law enforcement in the town, a direct adversary, which my initial idea was like, sick kid, you can really motivate that? Or are they just under the charm and are going to constantly be getting in your way, not trying to stop you, just getting in your way? And the hiccups.
I don't want every enemy to be under the direct control of the creature. So I'm tempted to put it as indirect. But I'm also tempted to say the sheriff, like the one lawman in town, had a broken bone or like a gunshot injury and was in the hospital and is now out way sooner than he should have been and is back on the street patrolling and all that. And that also would lead into why he doesn't let you talk to, you know, the town drunk if he's locked up, because he's actually been infected.
Okay. The sheriff.
What do you guys think? What angle?
Charmed, not ensorcelled, not dominated. I like. I think. Something that there's an idea I really like, but I think it would be very hard to execute. So I'm going to pitch it, and I'm not sure it makes sense. I like the idea of the sheriff healing from a gunshot wound overnight and knowing that that's not right, but not being able to perceive it as anything but normal. There's something really fun in there. If this was a book, there's something incredible in there, right? That would be the main character of our novel. Is like the sheriff is like, I know I'm not. I got shot and I'm better, well, I must have just healed.
Okay.
Wait, no, it doesn't make sense. I shouldn't have healed. And then he like, well, something. Wait, like stuck in loops like that is really interesting.
I have an option.
Or maybe that happens if the sheriff gets shot during your adventure. I don't know.
I think the sheriff was in like a terrible car accident on duty. He got a TBI, traumatic brain injury. It basically scrambled his brain. When he was healed and brought back, the charm wasn't able to go into full effect because his brain was scrambled in this way. So he came back to full health, but the charm didn't take full effect. So he doesn't see the truth of the situation. He keeps being distracted by the actual charm, but he's not actively resisting the party. If the agents are like asking questions, he's trying and he's pointing out inconsistencies, but he can't connect the dots. So he's not an enemy, but he's not a trustworthy ally either. And it's because he had that TBI that got cured. We could also put the town crazy / fisherman captain. He could have been drinking a little bit, and if that inebriated state made it so he wasn't affected by the charm in the same way that having a TBI wouldn't work on the charm.
You said that like you were worried we were going to get demonetized because you said drunk after the shit we've been talking about on this stream.
Yeah.
Really
that's where we draw the line.
Demonetized.
On the stream.
Can you get demonetized? Does YouTube send you a bill if you're non-monetized stream?
They just cancel the channel.
They just say you're shuttered, brother.
You're done. You're done.
Yeah, I like that. If your mind is already influenced by anything, maybe that would go, right? So like the drunk was suddenly sober.
Yeah.
But that's all the charm could do. All it could do is like wash that away. Because this thing is probably, if you think about it like genetically, right? It probably assumes that there is 12 of these creatures attacking people all the time and that you will get caught in a second charm immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But when there is only one, you have a kind of a chance.
And it's weak. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. I like that. So it's easily charm interruptible. You know, oh no, that's perfect. You want to know why? Because you know what that's going to lead to? If the party figures that out, they're going to be like, we have to go to the hospital, and everybody gets blackout drunk and then goes to the hospital so that the charm doesn't work on them. Oh, that's incredible.
But then they've got disadvantage on all their rolls. They've got negative effect, minus or plus 10 to all of their stats.
Right, so the sheriff, I'm immediately, there are scenes that I would run that would really interest me that are very simple. Like, you go into the hospital, you step in one of the 6 rooms to investigate, and the sheriff's just not behind you, and you go. And you, like, walk out into the hallway, and he's, like, halfway down the hallway looking around, like, calling your guys' names, and you literally have to, like, grab his hand and walk him into the room, and then he's like, ah! Like, it's gross, like, immediately freaks out. He can totally see it, but if you aren't there, his perception will always just, like, slide off in other directions.
And if you walk away from this location and you talk to him about it the next day, gone.
And I
gone
think
again.
Anybody within like a mile of the hospital is at that same level. Is there just like, there's nothing weird going on, and it just slides off the side of their
You can see every
perception.
6th room in the hospital, the window is covered in blood. It's like, you can't see that? And they go, I mean, it's a little dirty. They haven't cleaned the windows in a while, sure.
What do you mean?
But you see bloodied windows in the tower on the hill.
That's a nice pane glass right there.
Yeah, they added some stained glass and it's cool.
Oh, they must have Halloween decorations up. Oh, wait. Is it Halloween?
Set around Halloween.
Is it October 27th?
Real easy to brush those things off.
I'm writing it on one of my pages. We don't have to do it, but it's interesting. Okay.
It's fun.
So we have 2 bad factions. And we have 1 maybe disruptive, like, right? If the people at the hospital call the sheriff and say, like, these people are harassing us, he's going to tell you to stop. And if you explain it to him, then maybe, like, for the next 9 hours, he won't bother you. But by the next day, he will have forgotten again, and he will try to stop you again. And so the sheriff becomes this weird
51st dates,
yeah,
baby.
Exactly. You get this, like, Groundhog's Day character that but eventually, every reasonable party is like, we just have to avoid this guy. Like, can we just tell him it's Saturday and he goes home and then we lock him in his house so that we can just not have to deal with the sheriff anymore? I think is really funny. So now we have 2 slots left. I don't like giving the party too many allies in a Delta Green adventure, and we only have a couple of minutes left. Is Whitner helpful enough to count as a faction?
Yeah. Whitner has at least enough information to point out some things. He's wrong about a lot, but he's definitely an ally.
I'm going to put as our most hostile, we have the crew, followed by the cult, followed by the sheriff, and then Whitner. And then I want 1 more that are less in, because one of the themes of these adventures, right, is that the less informed somebody is, the more helpful they will act, because anybody who knows a lot is slipping already. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it makes sense that Whitner is like he knows exactly what's going on as far as his perception has it. Is he helpful? Yeah. In a, I'm going to burn down the 6th house on the streets, there's not a 6th house kind of way. Or like Whitner, you keep seeing something that would really creep me out that I think would be very effective. You're driving down the street and you narrate if one of them has a really high search skill, alertness skill in Delta Green. There's like a little toy house on the sidewalk between the 5th and the 6th house. Like it's been sat there. There's like a little toy house. And then you're driving down the road and you realize there's one between the 11th and the 12th house. And another one between the 15th and the 17th and the 18th house. So like Whitner literally is going down the street like putting little doll houses down.
Extra house.
Thinking like 6th house. Thinking he can like outsmart whatever this thing is. So now who is our kindest faction who knows the least about what is going on?
Before we go to that faction, Buzz just said, "No, I'm late."
No, Buzz, you just
hello.
We're making a Delta Green adventure scenario.
Adventure. We have 3 minutes left, so please do watch the VOD on YouTube because this has been we've had a really good time coming up with this stuff.
Yeah, and if you give him a minute, I think Ethan will do a recap.
We'll do a recap at the very end.
Yeah, I am. We always finish up with one. So right now we're coming up with one last faction in our Delta Green adventure here, and this is the faction that is the most directly kind and helpful, but as a result, they can't know very much about what is going on.
This is the people who went to the hospital, went through intake, were not helped, and then left. But, like, the door was locked and they just got out of there. They went out through the window, they, like, broke down the door and escaped, whatever. They know something weird is happening because the doctors are acting strange, the nurses are acting strange, but they left before anything else could happen. So they know very little, but they know something is wrong.
Yeah, James with a heat rock here, the local creepy high school girl who is a babysitter. Can I tell you something? One that I really like. It's like a local teen with like a 5-year-old, and the 5-year-old's parents don't remember that they have a 5-year-old anymore. And so now there's just this girl who's like, the kid the kid was choking or whatever, and she like gave him the Heimlich and brought him to the hospital, and then they locked her in a room, and she was like,
what the fuck?
Broke out, and then she went to bring the kid back, and the parents were like, who are you? Like, what's going on? And so the center, maybe the person who got this group together, which it sounds like sort of our Stranger Things style group of locals, at the head of them is this like dead, tired 17-year-old with a 5-year-old who won't stop crying, who's like, I can't bring him back. They don't remember they have a kid. I've tried to bring him back 10 times. They don't even see him half the time. I found him in the street 3 days later. Like, I don't know what to do. And there's all these other people that are like, we went there, they didn't help us, we broke out. Like, or one of them is like a younger person who went home and their parents didn't know who they were. And so you have this little group of people, like, I think you find like a support group at the community center that is like, and they're putting flyers up and no one knows who they are, no matter what they do.
An additional member in that party would be somebody who is in a household of 2 who was out of the house one night for whatever reason, and came back the next day to find like their spouse dead. They tried to report it to the sheriff, and the sheriff said natural causes, and they're like, that's not fucking natural causes. They're exploded. I'm looking at them. So it's somebody who's seen the horrors but wasn't charmed because they weren't in the home when it happened.
Yeah,
they were, 20 blocks away.
And if we set this adventure in like 1990, then the reason that they are having this weird support group, if we set it to before you could like just check people in for having, because you can't really do that. I don't know if you know. So there is like a whole thing that like at like the turn of I think like the 21st century, you couldn't bring somebody who was just like misbehaving anymore. We think of that as something that happened in like the 60s. That happened very recently. That like you kind of lost the ability to do that. So if we set it in like the 80s, it would make sense, because they're like, one of us asked, like, they'll be like, we had a 10th member. He went to the sheriff one too many times, and the sheriff brought him to the hospital to get help, and we haven't seen them since.
Yeah.
Now hear me out. We also, to build upon the fact that why aren't they leaving the town, the support group? Why aren't they going out to find more people? The answer is, this is a fishing town. We've already set that up. It could be a small island off the coast that has a roadway that leads to the mainland that has been washed over at this time of year, like for a month at a time, 2 months.
Oh, you get
There's no way off the island.
Helicopter flies you in.
You get dropped in, and then you have to go investigate.
So we just have a little interaction there. I need the hospital to have enough people in it. And so like that's all. Like I need people to be arriving at the hospital often enough that it has like that question of like, I didn't get help. If it's a town, if it is a village on an isolated island with 12 people, then the hospital wouldn't get enough traffic. So all I need to do is split that difference. Now I can give you a very real world example. This is deeply ironic. I won't dox anybody, so I'll just tell the story and you get to watch Spencer giggle. There is a town in New York State called Stillwater that you can only get to by train. There is no other way to get there. You have to take a train up and get off at a train station, and there is no other way to get to Stillwater. You have to take a train there and get off the train. So like if you have a car, you use it to drive around in the town, and it needs to be delivered by train. I don't know if that's still true, but it was true a few years ago when I first heard it, and I was like, that's ridiculous. I know because I was originally from a town also called Stillwater, and I told somebody locally to where I live now, oh, I'm from Stillwater, and they thought I meant that town.
Yeah.
And they asked
I've
me
gotten that a
questions.
lot. They're like, oh, it's really great camping out there, right? And I'm like, no. Nope. But I do think trains works, and what we could build on is somebody who fled, who's like realized the truth, could have just started walking down the train tracks. There could be like a missing person that walked down the train tracks trying to escape, and you can find them, starved, dehydrated. Their mind had been wiped, they were charmed, but they left.
The town doesn't need to be too isolated. What it does do, James has just hinted at this a little bit on accident. He just said set it in the southwest. We do need a coast, unfortunately, because Spencer's body did wash up on the thing. Although like Pacific Northwest would work. All you really need to do, and this is going to sound weird, but it's true. All you need to do is have the nearest town be further than like 60 miles away, because that's 2 to 3 days of hiking, and I hope you can find your way there. Like, I hope you can get there. Most of the time, if somebody needs to hike to another town 3 days away in the woods, they are going to die. They're going to break their ankle or get horribly injured in some way and not be able to get where they're going. So like that level of isolation might work. It gives us this question of like, why don't they just take their car?
Yeah, and that's why I was saying if we set it on an island, They can't take a car fucking anywhere.
So yeah,
they could take boats.
We have like 1.5 more minutes to be on here, so I'll just say so all I need a solution to then is, how are there enough people in town for this to be like a dynamic adventure with multiple people involved and multiple factions, and we are in a highly isolated location where people are not just leaving?
I think that the answer is...
my counter answer would be, would you abandon your friends and family and loved ones in your hometown? Like, would you go, well, I guess I'll move away forever and never come back, right?
The bigger threat is, like, if I came back home and my family member was exploded into a pile of detritus, I would leave town when the sheriff said, I don't know what you're talking about. I'd leave town to get the National Guard, the FBI. I'd be ringing every bell.
My follow-up question would be, how deadly are the crew? Are the crew leaping between trees? Are they like fast predators?
Cars.
Because if the goal of this, right, if this charm is how these things work, then the spores would be these like ravenous Terminator-style predators that would kill anybody that wasn't charmed the second they interacted with them, because they wouldn't want any of that to be able to get out. Michael, you seemed like you had a thought, and we are just about out of time.
Yeah, thinking of location, it's a little bit too big, but not by too much. Grand Canyon Island, it's a little big, but if you do the smaller Cayman Island, I think that would work pretty good.
Like, if it's a population of a few thousand people on a sizable island off the coast, that's still enough people to get into accidents where they like cut a finger off using a saw blade and they go to the local hospital, or a broken limb, so they go to the hospital, and when this happens they're not helped in the way they expect to be. So I think a few thousand people on an island is understandable, a la like the Cayman Island. It's not like there's nobody there.
Yeah, I think I'm cool with doing that if you just like setting it on an island. Here's my I think no matter what, the solution to this is the crew is deadly enough that they will kill anybody that tries to leave. Because if it is set on an island with thousands of people, then there's going to be thousands of boats.
Yeah.
There's going to be a ton of people that could just take a boat to leave. They could grab a canoe, grab a kayak, just paddle your way to the next island or to the mainland. So I think no matter what, we have two solutions. Solution number one is you either need to take a boat or you need to drive for an hour and a half or 2 hours. And the secondary is, and you will not make it where you are going because the crew is going to get you. And that distance, all that distance gives us is the delay we need for you to be hunted down.
The idea of like a black fin in the water going through and then like diving back under, and it's like the shape of a hand, and then they see it like through binoculars from the coast, the spores swimming around the island, preventing boats from leaving, sinking them as they go past, seeing these weird blackened slick forms of the crew at a certain point, I think is really fucking cool.
The other thing is, we did say this came from a colony of spores a bit. There's probably a few more of these drowned guys out in the water.
Well, I mean, that we don't really need to... We don't need to get too realistic, because then it's like, oh, okay, so the world is screwed and you can't help. Like, Delta Green's gonna have to napalm the whole area at a certain point. If you want to be like a super eerie cosmic horror GM, then at the end you describe off the coast of Hawaii a falling star hitting the water, and then you just leave that alone, and the party gets to assume that another Delta Green cell will go handle that one. So that's a good way to nod towards that. We don't need to worry too much about being like, but what if there's more? Because there's more of all of these, right? The Dark Young that we talked about that disguises trees, there's hundreds of those on the earth. They don't coordinate to all go to the same place and eat whole towns. They're spread out, and like, you might encounter one and then another many sessions later, things like that.
Yeah, I was mostly thinking that there could be a couple in the water stopping boats also,
like an active threat, but they're not consuming, so they wouldn't be strong enough.
Yeah, I think the crew absolutely fits that.
Yeah,
I think the crew is perfect for that, especially because these things wouldn't want competition. They don't. They don't know about guns, right? Like, they would if... Go ahead.
The crew, when they're still human, would go about destroying the ships. Like, when they start losing their mind but they're still physically humanoid. They like pull the plugs, drain the gasoline, burn boats, and then when they're fully transformed, they'd be in the water for anybody who ends up sneaking one out.
Oh, you know what I really like about this is it's turning. At first, they were just like these colony creatures that maybe formed naturally somewhere. Adding another, that like existential level to this. If somebody rolls like a high enough mythos skill or a high enough occult skill and starts to look into it, they start to notice, and there's an engineered quality. Like there is some bigger, more awful thing that made these. Because what do you mean, like, the hallucinations aren't just hallucinations. It's not generally like, oh, they act weird. They remember the wrong things that would be the most helpful. When they have their hallucinations, they see the boats as like monsters in the water. They see these things as creatures. It gives it that twist of like, it's not even just that these things are predators. It's there is a will pushing their hallucinations, angling what they do to be as powerful and as dominating as possible to take over that planet. All right.
And with the idea of the terraform, the fallen angel probably isn't the finale. The finale is it has readied the planet enough that some great old one can arrive and devour it, populate it, do whatever it needs to with it. It's about getting it ready for the real main event.
I think
that's just something that we cannot do with like Cthulhu mythos.
And especially if you fail. Like if you completely fail, that's a fun thing to narrate. All right. So, to recap, Michael.
Yeah. No, I was going to say with the recap, Buzz was asking a question that I was going to say is going to be recapped. He was asking if everyone is charmed but the group.
So, to recap, this scenario, called Fallen Angel, is a Delta Green scenario where a body crashes into the ocean. It is found by a fisherman and his crew of 6. The fisherman drops the men off on the with this corpse. They drag it off, and they are seeing this like strange creature that they found in the ocean. For some reason, he goes back out on the water. Could be anything. He needs to go back for a net or a buoy. There's something he needs to go back for. As he turns back around, he watches this thing grab one of his crewmates, pull it down to the ground, and like just watches that crewmate die. He pulls back around, and all of the friends are saying like, well, no, he drowned out there. We saw him drown saving this thing. We have to bring this thing to the hospital. It's an angel. Like, can't you see? They bring it up to the hospital. At the hospital, it begins to feed, using the crew as kind of its like agents, and it starts to have this charm effect where every time it kills somebody, always in a 6th room of the hospital, there is this like wave that encapsulates the hospital. When it does, it slowly degrades the memories and the minds of the people there while healing their injuries, and so to them it looks purely miraculous. They see these miracle healings at the cost, and they don't even really seem to perceive that the people die. Maybe they understand that that is true, but that doesn't really seem to sink into their minds. Eventually, this thing has taken over the hospital. And your crew arrives not because there have been murders, but because Delta Green has heard that there is a hospital off the coast and no one is dying. No one is getting sick. Nothing is happening at all. And that is a classic trigger to get agents sent. You arrive on the night that the first home is hit. It is the 6th house down the street after the hospital. When you arrive, you will find that the healthiest member of the house has been killed in a way that has left them a grotesque mass of flesh and growths and strangeness. But all of the family members there, the police that have arrived, the coroner say, it looks like to have been, some kind of like edema or something. This person just dropped dead. That's so sad. They had an aneurysm. You try to explain what you're seeing. Nobody else seems to be seeing it because they have been under the influence of the outer edges of this charm, and they are not able to see the truth for what it is. You continue for sort of an indeterminate amount of time. We don't really have that settled. Every 6th night, that is the kind of work we would do off or on another stream if we wanted to start breaking down who lives in all of these 6th houses. I'm trying to see if there's anything else on this first page that we missed. I don't really think so. And our hole in the fence, the way that you hear about this is that the A college student who is living in another part of the country gets a call from one of his parents that one of his parents who had a terminal illness is perfectly healthy and fine and is acting very weird. They tell a colleague who tells a colleague, and that colleague is a friendly who tells Delta Green. So while everybody is dealing with this forced rationalization, that fisherman, who we have titled Whitner, believes that this is some kind of biblical monster. And so if you end up investigating that angle, you will eventually find Whitner in his cabin outside of town with Bible verses painted to the walls, pictures of houses, and you will find all kinds of strange chicanery that he's been getting into, trying to trick the creature, putting doll houses in between the 5th and 6th house on the street, burning down eventually the 6th house on the street, not knowing that none of that can be effective. We also have 5 factions in the town. The first are the crew, the people that actually saved the creature. They are the most directly affected by its charm and its influence, and we see what happens in the long term. Crew members 1 through 5 are turning into these like gross, predatory, spine sharp, semi-aquatic monsters. The 6th is slowly turning into one of these creatures, as if it is reproducing, spreading across the planet. Our next faction are the cult. These are the people that are influenced in the hospital who have not been more grossly affected. The hospital staff, when they ask you if you know what today's date is, when they go through the questions that Michael alluded to, they will treat your correct answers as wrong. They remember it as being the day that the creature arrived. They will lock patients in rooms, not letting them leave because they will be healed that night when the creature kills again, relying again and again, right, on this same interaction. Our next is the sheriff. The sheriff, on the night that all of this happened, in a wild coincidence, or maybe a few days before, right? If he had like a brain injury, it could have been a month before. Yeah, he could be in there for a week. The sheriff, who's maybe like in a coma in the hospital, is alert and awake and fine, but his memory is so corrupted and corroded at the edges that he's not particularly helpful. He can tell that his memory is failing. He knows that something's wrong, but he can't stop forgetting what is going on, and so he will switch rapidly from day to day between being extremely helpful and helping you get done what you've done, and then the next day being a huge nuisance who doesn't remember who you are, needs to see identification, and doesn't believe you the very next day. What I like about that is you could roll like fast talk and succeed on day 1 and fail on day 2, and the sheriff is not helpful on day 2. Our next faction is Whitner, who knows a lot but is going about it the wrong way. And our last are a faction I have tentatively titled The Forgotten. A babysitter with a 5-year-old whose family doesn't remember that they have a 5-year-old. Somebody who went home to find their significant other scattered across the floor, but nobody remembers what happened, and everybody else says that they died of natural causes, and they keep trying to get people to understand. Maybe another person who has been forgotten by the entire town, like they were supposed to have been in the 6th house and they weren't. They have been completely erased from the minds of the town, and they are all isolated there because they will describe how the crew have been, in the first few days, destroyed the boats, destroyed the ways to get off the island, and recently they've stopped seeing the crew around town and have started seeing creatures in the water that will go after anybody that tries to swim. Probably somebody tried to swim and didn't get where they were going. And maybe it's set between the days of October 27th and 31st so that we can justify, so that people can say things like, that's not blood, that's decorations. I don't know. Maybe we don't need to go that far with it. Maybe it's creepier if that's not true. And that is our Delta Green adventure. Thank you all so much for watching. Special shout out to James. Thank you for chatting it up with on the YouTube with us. You always throw up some solid ideas. You can catch 3 streams here at Foolhardy Press. They all start at 7:30 p.m. They run to slightly different times, but they are all pretty fun to watch. On Sundays, you can catch Game Masters, Masters of Games, where Spencer, Michael, and I play video games that we have either already mastered or feel like we need to master. We just played Chained Together a couple of months late. If you want to watch that, you can watch us get increasingly frustrated and at the very end with it big time. We've been debating whether or not we are going to continue to play that game or we are going to play something completely different. On Mondays, you can catch The Party Makes Things Worse. That is our actual play stream. Right now, I'm running a Dungeons & Dragons game in the world of Prospect, which we came up with live on this stream, called The Song of the Reliquary. Very fun, horror-tinged action-adventure. It's very heavily inspired by, like, The Mummy and Alien and a couple of other things. We are just... The rubber's really hitting the road. We're on, like, episode 11. We have been introduced to a lot of the terrors, things are building, and we're moving in a good direction. And of course on Tuesdays you can catch DM Writer's Room, a show where we demystify the DMing process by trying to come up with monsters, magic items, scenarios for Delta Green, adventures for Dungeons & Dragons, playbooks for Monster of the Week, all kinds of things live with you. I feel the need to, it's been a while since we've said this, my idea for starting the show on the network is I hate the DMing advice format that is popular, which is giving like vague bullet point advice instead of saying, here's what my notes look like, here's what I come up with, here's how I come up with it. So we thought the easiest way to do that would be to do it live. You can also check us out on itch.io, where we have our first one-page RPG called The Last Thanksgiving, a turkey-tinged tale of vengeance, where you are a group of turkeys on a farm trying to kill the farmer and end Thanksgiving forever, as far as you're concerned. And soon you'll be able to pick up Resonance, and our another one-page RPG we came up with on this stream, where you play a group of 3 to 6 players trying to learn to work together as you all pilot a big Voltron mech. And we recently did another one-page RPG stream with an incredibly complicated mechanic, so sometime in the next 9 months, look forward to that. Also check us out on DriveThruRPG, where you can catch our first adventure called The Lich's Dollhouse. A very fun level 1, well, I think it's very fun, I wrote it. We all came up with it together and then I fleshed out some of the details. A level 1 adventure to introduce people to the game. It's got a mix of puzzles, a little bit of social, a little bit of exploration, a little bit of combat, traps. If you play like an idiot, you can quickly find yourself in more danger. And it's got all kinds of like new fun monster stat blocks that do these like miniaturized threats. It was pretty fun to work on. I will also say, just for fun, also keep your ear to the ground. Every once in a while, when one of our streams gets canceled, you get to turn into our very special stream. We just had one, which is why I'm saying this, called Scheduling Conflicts. When one of our streams gets canceled, we try to run a game in a system, any system we can come up with. We usually have to improvise the whole thing, and we call that show Scheduling Conflicts. We had one just this last Tuesday, this last Monday, because of some issues, so feel free to go take a peek at that if you'd like to. We've had a couple of those. Those are usually pretty fun. I think that's everything. Oh, check us out on YouTube, where Spencer records all kinds of fun videos. I help do the research on those. It's a really good time. He's been posting a lot of shorts, and I know there are some long videos to come, so there's all kinds of interesting stuff there as well. Thank you all so much for watching. Catch you on the next one. Peace out.
Bye.